Bretonia is fair and peaceful because everyone knows their place. Yours, Ed, is with the Truffle Hounds.
The Truffle Hounds. That doesn't sound too bad, but I'm assuming they're not hounds made out of truffles.
No, I think they're the ones that sniff around in the woods picking up truffles, so getting all dirty and muddy.
I love how in one quote you've managed to sum up Bretonia as a Marxist society where everyone is equal, but don't worry, some people are more equal than others. Well, welcome to episode 6 of the Close Order podcast. There has been quite a lot that's happened since we were last online. Since you've last had your face on the channel, things seem to have exploded. I'm sorry. I didn't leave it in the same state you left it. I can only apologise for my actions.
You're a content machine, man. I don't know how you're doing it.
So the secret is to cut down on sleep.
Yes.
But we'll talk about the variety of content that we've been up to later on. We have some exciting news, though, and I want to preface this. I don't want to blow this out of proportion. This is not a partnership. This is not a sponsorship, but it is a very cool first step. It's not something that I've personally ever had. We do have an affiliate with Element Games now. So, Hi guys, sorry for the quick interruption. Basically what happened was we recorded this podcast 2 hours after I found out that we had been approved for the affiliate, which means that I had not fully understood how the affiliate link worked. So I've cut that footage, and I just want to explain properly how it works here. I don't think I misrepresent it later on in the podcast. If I do, please, ping me at the time and I'll cut that bit of footage. But to explain fully how it works, we are, again, it's not a partnership or a sponsorship. It's just a case of if you follow the link that we've put down below, we get a 5% commission on the items that you buy through Element. Why would you do that? Well, if you want to support us and you want to buy new models, this is a great way to do so. I think Element are a fantastic company. Obviously, it sounds like I should be saying that because, I've got a financial incentive to do so. But if you think about it logically, I obviously went for the company that I've had good experiences with. I could have reached out to any of the many sellers in the UK, but I have found Element Games to be the most reliable, the fastest. I've never had any issues with them. I've had to send some stuff back because I've ordered things from 2 sellers, and they were completely fine. When I contacted them about return, everything that I've had in terms of contact with Element Games has been positive. So if you do want to support us, we do have an affiliate link below. Click it, buy some stuff. Only if that suits you. Don't buy stuff that you don't need. Don't add to the pile of shame. Sorry for the brief interruption. Back to the podcast. Yeah, absolutely. The goal when I set this channel up was we were going to be at 1,000 subscribers in 6 months, and we are 2 months and 3 days in, and we're at 700. So it's going fairly well with the new goal, and we haven't told them, but we're going to overtake the main channel within 2 years. That's the that's where it's going to be.
Begins here.
Look, I don't want to say that Social Blade says that it's going to happen, and Social Blade is a website that actually predicts the future. So, that's... And let me just turn this alarm off because I definitely have something to do there. Perfect, yeah. So, that is the exciting news of what's going forwards. If you do want to support, obviously, affiliate link down below. You can save some more money. We get some more money. Jobs are good. I guess now is a good time to say I've been getting direct messages from people, just been like, hey, really enjoy the content, and then asking me questions, which is not something I've ever experienced before, and is so weird. I'm not saying bad, but it's such a weird position to be in. It's like, but I am just a guy.
I'm just a boy.
No, it's been great. Obviously, there was a little bit of support, and by a little bit, it felt like a lot of support from the Squarebase guys who did promote a video that I did about their stuff on the channel. That's obviously absolutely helped. Also, they shit talked us, and that's also helped, I'm sure. Big fan.
I mean, promotion is one word for it. Abuse is another word.
Oh yeah, no, I mean
we're coming for you.
No, absolutely not. Anyway, moving on. Hobby roundup. What have we been up to? What have you been up to?
I would like to talk about something that has revolutionized the placement of my army already. And potentially for some people, this isn't going to be revolutionary, but I did initially start by buying plastic movement trays for my models.
Yeah.
Now, the ones with little rims around the outside, sticking models in, shifting around, all good, pretty standard stuff. I then decided I was going to change the size of my units, and that was a faff. And then moving stuff around, can't pick them up. I keep breaking the skeleton spears off. It's just been a bit of a nightmare. So I was like, there must be a better way than plastic movement trays with little edges around the side. And what I also found with the plastic movement trays is because I've got 3D printed resin bases, I think they're ever so slightly out in terms of number of millimeters. They might be like, the skeleton bases might be 25.2 millimeters or something like that. Because when you put 5 in a row in a tray that's supposed to hold 5 25 millimeter bases, it's just ever so slightly too big. Again, it's probably half a mil out over 5, guys. But that means they don't sit in the trays properly. Now, that could be an issue with the bases. That could be an issue with the trays. I don't know. But we're talking small amounts of millimeters, but ultimately when you try and mash them all together, it just means everything's all over the place. It all falls over. You can't transport it very easily. It's a nightmare. So I found a company called, and I'm not being sponsored by this at all, but a company called Mini Mag Trays. And these are metal trays made of magnetic material that you can basically just magnetize your models onto the movement trays. There's no rim around the outside. So your models, when they're ranked up, are just models that you can't see the tray at all when you're using it. I think it's really, really good, especially taking photos, that sort of thing. And I have, after getting a little order for the first unit, just see what it was like, and you can push different size trays together to make whatever size tray you actually want. So it's like a Lego set almost. You can just kind of clip stuff together and make however big a tray you need. And I did a little one for my first skeleton unit and thought, this is amazing. And I've just bought enough trays to do the whole army. Now it has come in over 100 quid just to do a 2,000 point vampire counts army. But I mean, ultimately I can change the size of the trays for whatever armies I do in the future. But it's been such a breath of fresh air when actually using them on the tabletop, in that actually everything ranks up. And it doesn't matter that the resin bases are slightly too big or slightly too small, and they all just fit together nicely together. I can just slide the models off as they die, which they do a lot, and it's absolutely fine. And then what they also have on them, which I think is changed my life completely, is they've got a little tab that sticks up at the back. So you can actually just pick the unit up from the little tab. So you don't have to try and grab them from the sides or underneath, anything like that. You just pick the whole unit up with a little tab. You can tip it upside down, and the whole unit just stays stuck on its tray. And the metal that they've used to make the magnetic trays is thin enough that you don't see it when the models are on top of it, but thick enough that it's not bendy or wobbly or anything like that. So you can literally just pick the models up, move them around. You can be quite brutal with them, and it's all absolutely fine. So actually, when I'm pushing models on their trays around, I can just use a little tab at the back and just kind of shuffle them to where I need. And I don't knock anything over. I don't break any spears. It's all good. I did still break one spear, but that was because I'm incompetent and I picked it up and then dropped it on the floor. But that wasn't tray related. But yeah, so that's been my hobby this week. I have been putting magnets onto models and putting them on trays, which I'm very excited about.
Very nice. What did you say the name of the business was?
The company's called Mini Mag Trays.
Mini Mag Trays.
They're a UK company, so yeah.
You definitely should sponsor us, because if you heard that glowing recommendation without even giving us any money, you should
give us some more money. Give me some free trays.
No, the best recommendation comes from people who just genuinely love a thing. So yeah. That's really good, and I might have to look into them myself. That sounds solid. I've just been using literally bits of magnetic sheet strips just on cardboard. It's fast and it's cheap. And
exactly, and yeah, 100%. You can make a mini mag tray with some cardboard and some of the wobbly sheet, so you don't have to go and spend hundreds of pounds if you don't want to. It's already an expensive hobby as it is, but
yeah,
to be honest, having the little tabs at the back and then having it so you can change the size, because I feel like once you've made one of your ones with cardboard,
yeah,
it's that size, and you can't change it particularly easily. You can't add more bits of cardboard on, so it's the sort of thing where actually you just buy them in whatever set you want, and then you just clip them together to make more with the little magnets that join together. So, and as I say, being able to pick them up without having to touch the models, just for my sweaty hands, it's really nice.
Lovely stuff. All right.
I'm only saying that because it's like 84 million degrees in the room that I'm recording this podcast in with you at the moment, and it's just I'm just sweating.
Yeah, we are in the middle of a heat wave in the UK, and it's only sort of like high 20s, but there's no wind. It feels very humid, and
Yeah.
We're also just not used to it, nor are houses equipped for it. So
Yeah.
apologies for the beads of sweat that are forming.
And as any British person will tell you, the heat is different in the UK.
Oh, it's hotter over here, mate.
It's not your foreign heat.
Your lovely, relaxing foreign heat. Bring that foreign heat over here. We've only got heat we want to get rid of. I think I've salvaged that from you sounding like some sort of racist. So we'll quickly move on. Hobby wise, I haven't actually done much. I've recorded a lot of videos, but I haven't actually done much. I've played a lot of online games, but we're going to talk about our games a little bit later on in the podcast. So yeah, I think that's it. Have you done any painting? You got much done there?
Yeah, so I finished some more skeletons,
Nice.
and I've now what I have done actually. I say I haven't done much else. I am now at 2,000 points of vampires built. So
Very nice.
That's been very exciting. I had a 2K game at the weekend, which we'll talk about later. But it was I really wanted to start getting some in real life 2K games done, and that required getting the last of the 50 skeletons and the last of the 20 graveguard built. So we're now it's grey plastic still, a lot of it, but it's I say. A lot of it we're probably half done now, but we're getting there. We are making genuine progress now. So yeah, it's been really
good. And for those of you who haven't seen, you should do. There'll be an episode of Hobby Heroes, Quest for the Hobby, out next week where we go over what we've done in the months. Lewis is a very good painter. He's used to be a commission painter. It's not a compliment if it's true.
How you get around being nice to me.
It is, yeah. I resent doing it. So yeah, do check out the video next week. You'll see the very well painted skeletons. But this is why it's taking him so bloody long. Because there has been, how long has it been now? We must be about coming up 4 or 5 months into the release of Old World, and you're still plugging away with your incredibly well painted army, loser.
Yeah. I did do my white lord on his banner with his.
Oh, you did. Bearer. That does look very good.
I'll talk more about it on Quest for the Hobby, but I think it's come out really nice. I'm really happy with it.
Yeah. So, if you want to see sneak peeks of what we're working on, and more specifically Lewis is working on, because I kind of just front load everything before the event, do check out our Discord. There's usually updates posted in there. That is down in the description. If you have a look at the link tree, you can find the 40k channel. I'm not going to call it the main channel. We're coming for you. But you'll find a link to the 40k channel. You'll find a link to the Discord as well. There's some Old World channels in there that you can find all of the stuff we're doing. Get updates on when the videos are posted. All of that.
Discord is bubbling away nicely, actually. We've got a right little bunch of reprobates in there now, so that's been good.
It is, yeah. Now is probably a good time to plug the main channel. If you do like 40k, now is a great time to check out the 6++ 40k channel, which again, link in the description. We've just had a massive data slate. I've done some videos. Everyone's done some videos. I don't think you've done anything, but you've been too busy with, being successful in other areas of life. So that's fairly reasonable and accepted. But if you do want to see some...
I'm a very important person, Ed.
Absolutely. If you want to see some hot takes on, Custodes and Necrons and the changes there, I've done a couple of videos on those. There's a weekly podcast where they're talking about the changes as well. All that good stuff. Link in the description. So, speaking of content, let's have a quick roundup of what's been happening since we last had a chat 2 weeks ago.
Hit me.
Oh, yes, I will. So things were doing all right. We were about 400 subscribers at that time. And then first thing that happened was put out a video called the State of Play Dwarves with Richie Amphlett. Now, Richie's lovely. I do talk to Richie a lot. Really nice guy. Really good at Warhammer. You've probably seen the video. That has the most views on the channel. Out of everything we've done so far, it's just Richie talking about how to win events and do really well with a faction that people don't think is particularly good at the moment. I don't think it's bad. I think it's limited in the ways that you can play it. But the way he plays it is very effective. So that's been great. Then I did a live list build for the Square-based online tournament. My Troll Horde list, turns out I actually think I've made some glaring issues with that list. And if you want to find out more about how to build good Troll Horde lists, we have a video coming out next week where we do a Judging the Journal breakdown of Troll Horde. If you want the short answer, the answer is put Ruby Ring in your list. That is basically where I've gone wrong. And I'm lacking shooting, which is really hurting me at the moment. There was also a failed wartime video. That's fine. You got to try things, but people didn't seem particularly interested in it, so it might be something that I revisit down the line if there's interest there. And then there was a Square-based online tournament meta and list review video that went out. So that did pretty well, and it got attention by Val. Val left a message, a few comments on the video at about 1 a.m. my time when that went up, and I genuinely couldn't tell if he was actually upset that I'd managed to do content about his event before he had managed to do content about his event. So I sent him a message, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying, because I was like, hey man, I'm still getting used to doing this solo YouTuber thing. If I'm out of line, I'm really sorry. I'll take it down until you've had a chance to do your podcast. And he was like, no, I'm messing with you. And he was lovely, shared it on the the Square-based Discord there. Really, really great stuff. Done a lot for the channel. But I did actually feel a little bit bad. I was like, oh shit, maybe he has a point. I probably should let them do, the biggest old world channel and the biggest old world event. I should probably let them talk about it before I do anything. So there is.
Are you saying their abuse of you was justified in this instance?
I wouldn't call it abuse, but I feel like it definitely was justified. So there will be some more content coming about that, but it will be coming after they've had chance each week to talk about their stuff, because I think that's only fair and proper. Yeah. Because it's their channel. Then I put out a video called "Boar Boys Are the Best Heavy Cavalry," and that is a factual opinion, and you should fight me if you think I'm wrong. Don't do that. But if you do have opinions that differ to mine, they're like 3 times the cost, man. Like 3 Boar Boys are better than 1 Blood Knight. That's what it boils down to. I had one person tell me that said something like, "I think he's confused. We believe that the usage of best is what's best in a 1-on-1." I was like, well, first of all, let's not speak for the wider community when you're an individual. And secondly, definitely not confused. In a game where you've got limited resources, 100% you've got to compare on what is my cheap unit doing against your expensive unit, or that's how you've got to look at it. You can't just be like, well, this unit is better on white paper in a vacuum. How could it possibly not be the best? So that's good. Had a lot of interesting conversations. A lot of people bring up really good points in the comments there, so I've enjoyed that one. And then we've also put out Trollhorde versus Ogre Kingdoms. So my first round in the Square-based online tournament unfortunately crashed in round 4. We just went back and loaded the autosave, but when I went back to record a battle report, unfortunately, it only loaded from round 4.
Oh.
So, yeah, haven't been able to make a video out of that one. But I did have a great game versus a guy called Ors, who is Canadian, I believe, and he played Ogre Kingdoms into me. I learned a lot in that game. It was a really fun, cerebral game to play.
It was a great game, yeah, great game to watch.
He is playing lots of monstrous infantry. I'm playing a lot of monstrous infantry. So we're in a position where we're playing sort of jockeying for space, playing opposite sides, and he gets the better out of me. But there is some really interesting movement in there that he does that I learned a lot from. So that's sort of where we're up to at this point. So that was it's been a fairly successful week. This week we've got some more stuff coming, but I've learned my lesson. If I tell you what's going to come, I will then end up recording things out of order, and I'll get comments saying, "Where's the video that you said that was going to come out on Thursday?" So I'm not going to do that anymore, because I just don't have the the consistency to manage
your own
that.
discipline.
Well, it's literally just a case of waiting for things to come through before I can say them. So I really wanted to record a video using the Element website last week, but I didn't get round to. I didn't get the affiliate link set up until this week.
Yeah.
But they were really fast in the reply on that one, so that was nice and easy. So we've gone through where we've been up to. Let's talk about the meat and potatoes. The Square-based online tournament. That is the real reason that the channel is where it's been, at this point. 300 increased subscribers later. So, first of all, we got an incredible shout-out. And by shout-out, I mean abuse on the latest episode of the Square-based podcast. That was... they release on Wednesdays as well, so it'll be last week's. But there was just a sort of 3-minute segment of them mostly joking.
Who is this guy?
Yeah, ragging on, taking the food out of our mouths, getting here beforehand. So that was lovely. I watched that, had a massive smile on my face. I really enjoyed being shit talked. More of that, please. Not just from them, just feel free to shit talk me in general. Yeah, it's yeah. Oh, it looks like we've got exciting news apparently there's going to be a UKTC Old World in Leicester by the looks of things. I've just had an update. So
Live news coming at you.
live
in
news
the
coming
Close
at
Order
you from
podcast.
yesterday. So yeah, if you're looking to do some Old World events, UKTC is putting one in Leicester this year, as well as the one in LGT and what's the other one they're doing? Coventry, I think.
Coventry, yeah.
That's
What's the
exciting.
dates of the Leicester one, Ed? Hit
Couldn't
me.
tell you.
Couldn't tell. Well, good.
Okay, let me load it up. I've done half a job here, so let's click
You're
on
going to
it.
finish it off now.
Leicester, I want to say off the top of my head, Leicester is December. It is
Little Christmas Old World
November
action.
30th to December 1st. So that'll be a good one too. The game will be in full swing by then.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to see the larger events picking up the Old World scene as well. I'll be interested to know how many sign-ups they're getting to each of these events.
They must be selling out because they started off with 2. They said they were going to do the LGT in Coventry, and
yeah,
obviously they've added another one already. So that's
Joe, I haven't bought my LGT ticket yet. Actually, I need to do that.
pull your finger out, son, because it might be gone already. So you better.
Oh, I hope not.
No, I think you'd be able to get in. People normally drop out for LGT because it's such a big commitment to go to London for a lot of people. So there's usually a wait list there. But yeah, also let's just plug events. Like, just go to events. If you're watching Old World content and you haven't finished painting your army, sign up for an event with like a couple of months deadline. That's the best way to get stuff painted. So I get all my stuff painted. So perfect.
A week's notice. You give everyone else a few months. Don't do what Ed does and do it in a week.
Yeah, no, I do that because I'm a fundamentally unwell person. Obviously, that is the reasoning.
You just love it so much.
Got other stuff to do with the rest of my time, but I work best to a deadline. Yes. So back to SBOT. So my round 1, given that I will be making a battle report about it, I should talk about it, and then we'll go into your game, and then we'll sort of see where we are from there. So I played into a lovely chap called Richie. He was playing Empire, and I looked at the list and I thought, this is pretty all right. He's playing a sort of Highlander list, one of everything. So he had,
Nice.
He's got an Empire on Imperial Griffin. Sorry, a General on Imperial Griffin. Great unit. I don't know why more people aren't playing it. He had 1 Hellblaster. He had 1 Steam Tank. He had 1 unit of state troops. He had 1 captain, not captain, whatever the entry-level character is, just sat in on a demigriff in with the rest of the units in the state troops, having a big brick there. He had some handgunners. He had some archers. He had a unit of knights. He had a unit of outriders. It was a really cool list. It's the sort of thing that I'm really liking about Old World, is people are playing more what they have and what they want to play than just being like, this is 3 of the most efficient unit. And I think the game is really set up in a way that benefits that. It feels like you need to have more defined roles for your units. So that's really fun. I'm liking that. If you haven't seen, obviously I'm playing Troll Horde. My list is basically Wyvern Boss, Troll Hag, Ogdras, big unit of Stone Trolls, medium unit of Stone Trolls, small unit of River Trolls, big unit of Boar Boys, 2 units of Spider Riders. Jobs are good. No shooting. I have 12 short bows with poison in. I don't have a ruby ring. That's a real problem. So I need to fix that problem. Yeah. It's a shame.
You make a really important point about units needing specific roles in Old World, and I think that is definitely true. And something I'm learning definitely with the vampires. Different units are doing specifically different things.
Yeah,
and they're kind of very one-dimensional in what they can and can't do. So it's really important to make that kind of synergize together. I don't know whether one of every single unit is the way to make that synergize, but it's definitely the way to learn what each of those units do in a really good event.
I'm wrong. He had 2 of 1 unit. Battle Magic level 4 wizards. So now's a great time to point
Killer
out.
Of Flame, was there by any chance?
Now, there was initially only 1 Troll Horde player, me. Another one has joined. I haven't actually looked at their list since, but for the sake of, because they were a late addition to the lists when I was looking at them, I'm going to just say that there's only me, because that makes things infinitely funnier. Did you know that 75% of the players at this event have teched for me and me specifically?
You are the big cheese now. You've
Absolutely,
got a YouTube
yeah.
channel. That makes you important.
I put a video up with my lists telling people what I was playing, and I put it up about 2 hours before list submission deadline. So what happened was 75% of the people who were there who weren't running Flaming Attacks or Battle Magic Casters or Ruby Ring, they all watched the video and rewrote their list in that 2 hours and then re-uploaded it. So, definitely not exaggerating that 75% of the people there are fully teching for me. But
feel
yeah,
like I feel like the world will want me to take you off your perch at the moment, but you're just looking so good up there, Ed.
obviously, I don't actually think that they've all tech for me, but it is interesting. I think maybe people were expecting more Troll Horde because it's definitely a list that people have sort of talked about as being very competitively viable, and this is an
Yeah.
event which is you might expect to see more competitively viable lists. Although going through all the lists has been really cool, and I think a lot of people are playing sort of what they have and getting more reps in and
Doing it
using
in
that
online version, yeah.
for practice for their in-person events, which is what online is a great tool for. But yeah, it's been really fun to have a look and see like, oh, people aren't just running this very meta thing. Obviously there are a number of scream lists, but less than I'd expected, and also I don't think screams are actually anywhere near as hard to beat as people are making them out to be. I think they are absolutely devastating if you let them get close, but I
Yeah.
think the more people play, the worse the scream list is going to get, because people are going to get more practice against how to deal with an army that is inherently very short ranged, and people are going to take more magic resist, and people are going to take ways to kill the mortis engine at range, and people are going to come up with strategies to deal with it. And I don't think it's going to go away, but I don't think it's going to be the best list in the game
No, it will
6 months down the
become one
line.
of those kind of gatekeeper lists, won't it?
Yeah,
It'll be the sort of thing, if you want to go and do well at an event, you need to have an answer for a dragon and you need to have an answer for screaming.
yeah,
And there, obviously, you're going to catch people out with that, and there are going to be people that struggle to play against it. But actually, people that want to do well at particular events, I'm sure, are going to look at that and go, well, how, when I come up against that inevitable vampire count player, what am I going to do to stop that scream?
yeah.
And
And I
that
haven't
question's been answered.
I haven't played against a scream list out of any of the tournament games I've played, which is up to now, I guess, 12 tournament games.
Yeah.
So it's not even like you're guaranteed to get one. And I have played against a tournament level scream list. I've played them a couple of times, but it's not, you shouldn't be scared of going to an event because you're like, oh, I'm just going to see all the screams. It's,
No.
it's still a very varied meta game at this point. But yeah, so I played against Richie, lovely guy, had a really good time. I deployed so that I was out of range of his battle magic caster on foot. I didn't want to take as much fireball to the face as possible. I won the roll off to go first, which was nice. I got all my spells off. I marched right up to the middle of the board, so I was able to, threaten some charges next turn. He positioned on his turn so that I wasn't able to get any meaningful charges. He rolled his spells for his battle magic casters. I think he rolled it for both. I don't think he had the points to get the Lore Familiar in there, which meant up that he had the battle magic spell that causes panic on both of his wizards, which is a terrible spell that you should never pick. But then sometimes your opponent rolls into it and they're like, well, I'm going to cast it anyway because I've got it, and that absolutely scuppers you.
Yeah.
So my unit of stone trolls was, going to charge into his handgunners, not handgunners, crossbowers, and then I think it would have overrun and caused some real panic, and that was going to be the gun line is really tied up, and that's kind of it for the game. That was sort of how I was feeling about it at that point on turn 2 or turn 3. And he cast the spell that causes panic, whose name I've forgotten, but it isn't even worth giving it a name because it's such a terrible spell. And I failed my panic check, even when I was in range, because there's no BSB in this list. It's very hard to fit BSB into a Troll Horde list.
Yeah.
I failed my panic check, and then I fell back in good order because I was above, half strength. But then he then caused me to, cast it again, and it said you only ever take a panic test once per phase, but because it says if you don't have to take a panic test, give ground. So then I moved back another 2 inches, and then he killed even more of my models. So I started, went into his turn with 6 trolls or something like that were a near unfailable charge, and then I ended up, I think, an undeclarable charge, and I only had 3 trolls left. So that was the point of the game where I was like, oh god, this has gone so
Kick in the
wrong.
teeth, yeah.
Yeah. It sort of got to turn 4, and the issue I'm having is I have next to no shooting in the list, which I've already said, but it means that you have to be the one who is full committing, which is so difficult to do when your opponent has screening units, or if they have countercharge units. You have to be playing much better than your opponent to get the win, which is a handicap that I really shouldn't have given myself, and it wasn't deliberate, but it just meant that it came to turn 4 into the dregs of the game, and I was looking at it, I was like, okay, so how do I steal a draw from defeat?
Yeah.
And I was in a position where I definitely could have done that if rolls had gone my way. But, that's the game of Warhammer. You can't expect everything to go your way and not your opponent's way. It ended up being, I think, quite a close loss. I think it was an 8-12 or something along those lines.
Not too bad, yeah.
Yeah, I think for how it went earlier in the game, I was happy with it, but definitely really feeling the lack of the caster. But good to get more reps in with the Troll Horde, and it's just a shame that I can't change the list now. Really, you could argue that I should have practiced the list in the exhibition round for the 2 weeks before the tournament started. But
One might argue that was the point of the exhibition round, but
yeah,
let's not split hairs.
So the problem is, halfway through that, I had an actual square-based event to go to, so I was super busy for that. And then I tried to play my opponent, but he had dropped. So then I was just like, oh, I guess I'll find a game. Nobody responded to me in the chat when I put it up initially. I was talking to Richie. He was like, oh, do you want to just play a game? I was like, yeah, sure. So I played a bad Bretonnians list with some fun things I wanted to test. I went 119, which is fine. A practice game is a practice game. They're for losing. I don't enjoy how Bretonnians play. Then I wrote the Troll Horde list. And then I submitted. Here's the thing. There's seeding in the event. So I think the way the seeding works is the higher seeded you are, the lower seeded your opponent is in round one. I'd hope so anyway. And this is an interesting topic to get into, whether you think seeding should be done for an event. But what that meant is I think I got paired into someone who was seeded quite high, which is fine.
What was your seeding based on?
How well you did in your exhibition rounds. So
right, okay.
I went 119 and I only played a single game, so my seeding was probably
pretty
as
low,
close to the floor as possible. Which is, I'm not bothered about playing good players. But let's talk about seeding at events. Do you think that should be done when you come into an event? Do you think that's something that's valuable?
This is something I've always thought about. So anyone that doesn't know, the standard event is your first round is paired randomly, and then winners play winners all the way to the end of the event, and eventually you hopefully get to a position where one person has won all their games, and therefore they win the event. If not, it's done on points, etc. But what you end up creating in that situation, especially for the larger events, is that your really good players, your top players, will effectively play 3, maybe 4 junk games. And this is no disrespect whatsoever to the people that they're playing, or it meant anything to inflate any egos of the really good players. But they're effectively playing against people in the first couple of rounds almost randomly who they've just paired into, just happened to be some guy who's turned up to the event as unfortunately ended up being paired into the top player, and just smashing them. And then by the time they get to play anyone sort of at their level, you're already 4 or 5 games in. And that's broadly that's how it's worked, and you don't get that many complaints about it that I see. I don't think people think it's a complete disaster of a system. People enjoy events. It's all really good, and the people that aren't very good enjoy playing the people that are really good, and there's plenty of positives about it. But you do end up in a situation where could it be better? Could people enjoy these events more if you started from a point where the system was kind of built so that people played more people on their level? And that might be slightly different to what you're suggesting there, where the top players play the worst players. And
so the downside to that is because you're obviously going to an event with the intent to win if you're a good player. And just for anyone who doesn't know our background, both Lewis and I have played 40k competitively for a while. And I think it's fair to say we're both pretty good. We weren't, household names, but we're at points able to hang. I had a undefeated event in the UKTC 300 player event. Lewis has been winning games with lists that shouldn't win for the entirety of the time he's been playing. So we both sort of have a grip on what it's like to play competitively. I think if I, as a competitive player, go to an event and round one, I know I'm going to be paired into other competitive players, I feel a little bit hard done by, because in theory, the worst players, the lower ranked players, have an easier round one. But then if you pair the other way around, which is you put your highest ranked player versus your lowest ranked player, round one's effectively worthless, because all you're doing is rewarding the players who are good and have put in the work to be in whatever ranking system it is, whether it's BCP rankings, ITC rankings, whatever. Old World ends up having, because I'm sure there will be rankings, you're then in a position where round one is a bit of a blowout, and the people who have just come to an event and just getting started can feel really discouraged. So yeah, I think it's an interesting one, and I don't know if there's a good answer to using seeding at events.
No, because you could seed it using groups, something like that, similar to the Euros going on at the moment. You put two kind of higher ranked teams in with two lower ranked teams in a little group, and they all play each other, and that's your first 3 games.
Yeah.
And then your position in the last 2 rounds is based off that. Again, it depends what you want from an event, isn't it? Do you want the best players at your event playing the worst players? And that is, I don't know. I think there's probably some really, really good players that like the fact they get a few easy rounds just to warm up in the course of an event.
Oh yeah.
And just winning games feels good, doesn't it? But there's probably also some really good players that would go, actually, do you know, if there was an event where I knew I was playing against other top players and that's all I was going to do,
Yeah.
I'd relish that. I'd love to jump into that event and try and play against the best players in the country and see how well I come out on top. It's much more challenging. All those games are going to be harder. But then you're effectively creating kind of 2 events or 3 events simultaneously, in that you've kind of got like a lower ranked event where all they're playing each other. But then those kind of lower ranked players, they couldn't really win because the higher ranked players are playing each other. There's a conversation to be had there, I think. As I mean, potentially more so 40k because it's a bigger scene. But at what point?
So 40k has that. There's some events that attract more good players.
Yeah.
So I mean, for a start, the UKTC circuit attracts people from around the world to come to the events. You also then get the locals playing, but you know, the one that immediately jumps to mind, Alpine Cup, I think has a very high percentage of good players. The WTC events, obviously teams, but before that they have a singles event that's mostly very good players as far as I can tell. What's quite funny is there's the UKTC. If you go undefeated, you get invited to an event for people who have won events and have gone undefeated. So it's a room full of killers, and it's a fantastic experience if you ever do go to one. But I know of some players who have turned down going to those events on the face of it. They're like, oh, you know, I can't make that weekend work, or I don't get ITC points for it, or whatever. I'm not sure if you do, you might not. But realistically, it's because if you're playing against players as good as you, it's a real hit to the ego when you go 2-3 and you're used to going, you know, winning your first 4 games and then maybe winning the 5th one, depending on how you're pairing in. So I think it's quite an interesting, and those players don't, you know, stay at the top of the game for a long time, because if you're not willing to put the practice in against the best players, then you don't. But I think it's an interesting seeing who ducks the blow to the ego.
Yeah, and we're in a really interesting point with the old world at the moment, aren't we? That, because there isn't, like, the ranking system's not in place yet, do we have an opportunity as a community to design a ranking system that we think works a bit better? My immediate thought is you look at something like the chess rankings, where you don't earn points based on how well you place at a particular event. You earn points based on who you play. So how well ranked are they compared to you? So if that top player in this example goes and plays against someone who doesn't go to many events, is very inexperienced, they're not going to get many personal ranking points for beating that player. But if they go and play against a really top player, then the amount of points they're going to get is significantly larger. So I know there's been 40k scene has dabbled in that ever so slightly. There are a couple of ranking systems going around where players are kind of pairing off against each other.
Yeah.
And personally, I think that's a much better way of running an overall ranking system. And then it comes down to how you translate that into an event.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the two things, if you're interested in that, the 2 things to look at are like an ELO system, ELO, or Glico. Glico, I think, is the better one. That's the one that chess uses, or it might even be Glico 2. But yeah, I think that's much better than the ITC circuit that we have in 40k. That does just promote going to bigger events. And you can get, if you go for 1 by smashing 4 people who are just like okay at the game but aren't like particularly well known, don't travel, don't go to a lot of events, you know, don't have a good ELO ranking, that gives you an inflated score where you actually weren't as good as it stands out. And I think actually I benefited from the ITC
I have as
system
well. Yeah.
a couple of years ago. So 2 years ago, I was ranked at the end of the year like 105th, 106th globally, which is a great number. I was going for top 100. But if I look at the good players that I played over the course of the year, I think I probably had like 4 games into really, truly excellent players just from, the event runs that I had. And I beat 2 of them out of the 4. But that should put me at, realistically, an okay spot, not like one of the top spots in the world. Not that 106th is anything to super brag about, but just as an example, I was playing a lot of players who were worse than me, and I was beating them. And yeah, getting points for that, which is, big number go up, it makes monkey brain very happy, but it's not actually a representative basis. So yeah, I think there is something to that. Like an ELO system would be fantastic for Old World.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'd be more inclined personally to go to competitive events if I knew that I was playing against players of my level or higher. Because I've got to the point now where that's the sort of game when I'm looking at 40k as my kind of competitive experience. That is what I'm looking for. I'm looking to go against the hardest stuff and test myself against it and really push on as a player. So I'd be much more attracted to go to an event where it was ranked by a way that I was going to end up against someone of my level. So
100%. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's been really interesting engaging in spaces where people are talking about the game, because obviously 6++ is a competitive team and we're all very competitive. We try to be like sportsmanship first. Like number one is you want to be a good opponent, but then you also want to win. You want to play against the best players. A lot of the people that I've been talking to, even closed doors, are just like, oh, this player's bringing, a cheesy list. And I don't think that's a moral failing. Just to be clear, I'm not ragging on that opinion, but it's so wild for me coming from the competitive 40k background. I'm like, no, I only want to play against those lists and I want to beat them. And I will get so much gratification from doing that. And because I have that sort of special snowflake aspect to me, I don't want to do it playing the Scream list. I want to write the 3rd best list in the game, and I want to be like, yeah, you didn't see this coming, motherfucker, did you? Which is objectively the wrong thing to do if you're trying to play competitively, but it makes the game more fun to me. Yeah. That 4-1 feels a lot more satisfying when it's with a list that you've brewed and people don't expect to be good. Than like the first 5-0 you get's cool, but like after that point, you're just like, I did do it with the objectively best list in the game, and it's kind of dull. Yeah. Speaking of 10th edition Eldar, where I won an event and then stopped playing for 10 weeks because it was so dull.
You ruined your own enjoyment of the hobby.
It was like kicking babies. It was so fucking miserable. So yeah, stop doing that pretty sharpish. But yeah, I mean, I've really disjointedly talked about my game. Do you want to, in a much more like put together way, talk about the game that you had against some ogres
in a single vampire count based package? Yeah, so this was my first in real life 2,000 point game on a tabletop with plastic models and some resin models on my magnetic trays, which I've already raved about. My vampire list, 2 big blocks of 25 skeletons, so 50 odd skeletons, big 20 man unit graveguard, couple of characters, Tomb Banshee for the screams, the level 4 necromancer, Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, which Ed and I have been backwards and forwards about. Not a magician, no magic weapons, so relatively cheap. Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, with the ability to do some resurrecting. And the White Lord with the Battle Standard Bearer sitting in the Graveguard unit. And then Blood Knights, Terrorgeist, and 2 units of Dire Wolves. So big lumps of infantry sitting in the middle. The Dire Wolves, thanks to some great people on Discord, act as like a marching column, then transitioning to open order, combat order, attack as screens and redirect, and then the fast stuff going down the flanks. I played up against a friend of mine, John, and his Ogre Kingdoms. He was running 2 big units of Ogre Bulls, so big 8-man units, which I think we're already going to swap to 4-man units based on how we went on. But 8-man units of those, with the Battle Standard Bearer, the Magician, and the General, kind of scattered in those 2 units. 2 units of the guys with the big they're like small cannons that they're carrying. I can't remember what they're called, gut belchers or something.
The lead belchers, yeah.
Lead belchers, that's it. A couple of units of dogs of his own, and then a big unit of Mornfang cavalry. So we just played open battle, but it was really good to just see 2,000 point armies on the battlefield. John's were painted, mine weren't quite finished.
He cheated though. He only had about 15 models.
Yes, yeah, he had a much lower model count than me, but just to actually line everything up, and I'm just looking at it going, this is what I remember from 10, 15 years ago, and this is what I love. It just looks like a proper like historical battle. It just looks fantastic. And I couldn't stop taking photos of the two armies just ranked up, looking at each other across the board. So I put some in the Discord. I put some photos of the game in there. It just looks really cool. But yeah, so I got first turn, and John wasn't quite ready for the speed that the vampire counts suddenly move when they have hellish figure now and don't raise zombies.
There we go.
Another learning point that I've had. So basically moved everything up quite quickly turn one. He had decided to Vanguard move his dogs forward, which I don't think he'll be doing next, because basically turn one I was able to scream with the Banshee and the Terrorgeist into the Vanguard move dogs and just kill both units. They haven't got very good leadership. Then we put the -2 on it, and even average roll, you're killing 4 or 5 dogs in one go. So he lost both of those screening units immediately, which set the tone for the early game on the flanks, because basically the zombie dragon, and he basically positioned his 2 lead belcher units on the flanks with the Mornfang cavalry on one side. Basically, the zombie dragon on one side with the Blood Knights was able to panic the lead belchers and then charge through into the Mornfang cavalry who were behind. So he didn't get any of his charge bonuses with his Mornfang cavalry. So turn 2, the Blood Knights and the zombie dragon are into the Mornfang cavalry, and on the other side, the Terrorgeist charges into the other unit of lead belchers. But basically, after turn 2, I've killed all of his flanks, and then. But annoyingly, when I did that, everything overran. I failed all 3 of my tests to restrain, and everything overran off the board. So basically, by the end of turn 2, the only thing that's left on the board is all the infantry in the middle, because all of my stuff's run off the board. All of his stuff is dead. So, and obviously, but you have to bring the units back on basically at the exact point that they came off the board, and then you can move them again after doing that. But basically, it meant that I couldn't get any of my fast stuff back into combat until sort of turn 4, turn 5. By which point, the middle of the game has just degenerated into this just brutal melee, where you've got these big units of 8 ogres just hammering skeletons. Obviously, they will just plow through like anything up to 10 skeletons in one round of combat. And then I will go, okay, if I can just do 2 wounds back with the Graveguard, or I can just challenge the champion out so he just kills 1 skeleton but just does the overkill. And then I can use the Battle Standard Bearer to reduce the amount of wounds that I take. Then I can heal all those skeletons back up. And eventually it gets to the point where backwards, forwards. And he does break 1 skeleton unit. He spikes on his rolls and he kills 15 skeletons with his front rank of ogres. I don't kill any back. I roll a 1. And then, so basically I lose another 15 skeletons to being unstable, which means he's able to then kind of pile through. So I've got my Graveguard and skeletons on one side, locked in combat, 1 big unit of ogres, and his other unit of ogres has broken through. And I'm like, oh shit. Because next turn he's going to be able to spin round and then get in the rear of all of my skeletons and Graveguard. But luckily, by that point, we were on turn 5. The Blood Knights and the Terrorgeist had at least made it back into combat, or back into the middle of the pile. So I was able to basically charge that last unit of ogres from both sides. Couldn't kill it, and unfortunately that was the unit that was almost 800 points of his army, because it had the characters in it, and it was a big chunk of his army that I was just kind of pinning with the Blood Knights and the Terrorgeist, but couldn't quite finish them off, which allowed me the time for the Zombie Dragon and the other unit of Skeletons and the Graveguard to finish the other big unit of 8 ogres.
Yeah.
So then the game ends turn 6. I have lost both units of dogs, and I've lost that unit of skeletons. But that's all I've lost, because I've managed to res up the Blood Knights back to full. All the other Skeleton and Graveguard units have been resurrected back to full. He has lost his unit of ogres, one of his big units of 8 ogres. He's lost his Mornfangs. He's lost his dogs. He's lost all his lead belchers. So that basically works out about a 900-point win in my favour. So that's 16-4 victory for my first in real life.
Congratulations.
Which was great.
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
Yeah, it was really good. It was interesting as well to play against an army that just shut down by magic. So every single spell I was trying to cast after turn 1, I managed to get 1 spells off turn 1. That was great, get all my movements up. But after that, the Necromancer base did nothing for the rest of the game.
Apart from Reslo's models.
Apart from res loads of models, but he just couldn't. I couldn't get any spells off. So it was really interesting looking at the screams without any of the leadership debuffs going in, because they're so much less effective. So if your opponent has any ability to stop you casting, he had dispel scrolls, so he just had a couple of them scattered, so he could just roll that extra dice. So just the key spells, he could just be like, "No, shut up, you're not having it." Which meant, like, because I just want to get Spiritual Vortex off, stick it in the middle of his army, and then scream twice, because the ogres go down to leadership 6 at that point, or leadership 4 at that point, and actually a couple of average scream rolls on his dice, he can lose 3 or 4 ogres to 2 screams. And suddenly that changes the whole maths of my combats at that point. And he just was like, every time I was trying to do that, I was like, nope, not doing it. So yeah, it was interesting to see how the vampire counts perform without the buffs.
Yeah.
And I think even without the buffs, you can see why they're one of the best units, best armies in the game. Because terror and fear, brilliant. And just so maneuverable with the fast stuff. And just the skeletons just don't die fast enough. And that is with the ogres able to kill 10 to 15 in one round of combat. They just don't do it.
Yeah, because they'll be hitting on 3s, which is like a normal weakness of monstrous infantry. So they've got high attack density, but quite low hit rate. So if you're getting those attacks and you're hitting on 3s, and then you're wounding on 2s and taking away all 100%. The armor because the great weapons, it's absolutely brutal.
Definitely, for sure.
Yeah. No. So you're talking about that big brick. I think Points Denial is such an interesting way to build around. I have a thought that I'm thinking of, which is, so Skaven weapons teams, they work the same way as Fanatics because they're a unit upgrade. So if the weapons team doesn't die, the max you can get is 25% points for the unit. So if you're running like a 500 point unit of Storm Vermin, for example, and the Poison Wind Mortar doesn't die, the most you can get is 125 points for it. So I'm looking at writing some Skaven points denial lists, which is
the weapon teams just disappear, and
they just sit at the back of the lob, and then they go, "Oh, it's all gone wrong, boys. Let's Scarper." I think that's an interesting sort of list style to build around. And I think it might make Skaven a bit more competitive than just doing nothing. But no, it's good. I'm glad that you finally got a full size game in person. Obviously, played
loved every minute
online, but it's so much better to play in person.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. Well, we do try and keep these to under an hour, so we're going to wrap this one up here. We're having a blast at the moment. If you've got any suggestions for things you'd like to see, please do let us know. Thank you so much for all the support. It's been really lovely getting the really positive feedback. Everyone's been really nice. The support's been fantastic. Do keep liking, watching, subscribing as much as you can, and as long as you enjoy it. Don't do it if we're shit. But anything that you want to end on there?
No, just echo that. Thank you. And if anyone has any suggestions on how to run Graveguard units, that'd be very much appreciated, because I just wasn't satisfied with it. So just let me know how you're running your Graveguard, because I want to know.
Yes. And we probably should start doing listener questions. We've probably got enough views that it's worth doing. So there will be a channel in the Discord, Old World listener questions or podcast questions.
Let's do it.
If there is anything that you want to know, do chuck them in there, and we'll start answering those going forwards from a fortnight's time.